Good morning, one and all, and welcome to the main object Big Book study meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David. Hello, everybody. Oh, my word. Look, we have a bunch of folks here, so that's wonderful. And could we start the meeting with a reading? I'm going to ask my friend Diane M. Diane, would you be so kind as to read the preamble? I'm going to put it up on the screen for you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Diane, and I am an alcoholic. AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Diane, thank you so much. Appreciate your help. And now, if everyone would care to join me in inviting God into the meeting today, I'm going to start us off with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. So, welcome, folks, to the this is week 14, believe it or not, of the main object Big Book study. And as most people know, if you've been here before, we go through line by line the text of our main Big Book. And what we do is we break that text down into 5 categories as a way of, and that's not the only tool we take away from our meetings, but what it does is it helps us to frame the text as a more easily understood tool for our own sobriety, but even more importantly, as a more effective tool for sharing the message of our program with others. And so when I say 5 categories, I will just remind everybody those categories are questions, directions and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. And of course, the colors that I have listed next to each one of those are highlight colors that I use to help me easily, quickly reference what I'm looking for. So the other thing that I wanted to mention as well is if you haven't been here in the last couple of weeks, one of the things we've been talking about with some of the participants is a slight format change where I will go through my own analysis and reading of the text until 7 o'clock, so straight. And what I'd like is that if you have comments or suggestions or questions, that we hold those until 7, and then from 7 to 7:15 we will open it up and either do discussion, questions, or continue reading. It'll be sort of an open format at that point. So the one thing that I want to share is last week I brought up the word juggernaut. And Robbie, I don't think Robbie's here today, but that's okay. His daughter got married yesterday, so he's allowed a pass. Robbie asked me for a definition of the word juggernaut, and I was a bit verklempt. I didn't know. And so I wanted to go and take a look, but not just go to not go to any dictionary, because I've heard it is helpful when really studying our text to go to, because word meanings change, and certain words mean something different now today than they did in 1939. So I've heard it recommended to purchase a 1939 dictionary, which I did. It's on its way to me. I bought it through eBay. And however, what I found online was a 1935 online dictionary, and I went and I found the word juggernaut. And it's really instructive. That's why I wanted to share it. It's not just a small little thing. So, because I just thought it was like something big and imposing. But the word juggernaut, its source is from mythology, and I'm mentioning this. Excuse me, I'm mentioning this because remember in our text it talks about alcohol being a bone-crushing juggernaut, and what it talks about is that the word juggernaut is taken from the Hindu tradition, and I'm looking about halfway through where the yellow highlighting begins. The uncouth idol of this deity at Puri in Orissa, that just gives us some background, annually dragged in procession of enormous cars. So this large, like statue or idol that they would drag through town in an enormous car. But look at the part in orange, under the wheels of which devotees are said to have thrown themselves to be crushed. Another definition is anything to which persons blindly devote themselves or are ruthlessly sacrificed. And so when the book talks about a bone-crushing juggernaut, that just takes on new meaning and resonance for me. So I'm glad that Robbie asked me for that definition. And I did that a couple times in our reading today. So we'll see more of those definitions. So I'm taking a little step back. We are in section 2 of Dr. Silkworth's second statement, the long statement. And I'm just going to go back for a second. I'm not going to dwell too long on this, but I'm going to back up to some stuff we covered last week. And I'm starting at the bottom of, in the blue edition, Roman numeral page 28, in the red edition, Roman numeral page 26. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. So my ability to understand, it's not just the continual drunkenness and debauchery that's the problem. It's I lose the ability to recognize the difference between delusion and reality. My delusion becomes so sort of expertly crafted to support my drinking that I cannot tell the difference between real life and my delusion life. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. In fact, I would say the only difference, looking back now, between my delusion life and reality is that I was absolutely convinced, not only during my drinking, but during my early recovery, I was absolutely convinced that my delusion life was far more insightful and accurate in terms of representing the world and reality than was the real life that other people were sort of beckoning me to join. So to them, their alcoholic life seemed like the only one. And one of the things that has jumped out at me after I've read that again through the week, and by the way, we mentioned it last week, folks, but if you weren't here, all of this paragraph here on the bottom of this page and through to everything but the last 2 lines on the next page. It's all one paragraph. I have it highlighted in pink as a warning. To them, their alcoholic life seems like the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can, again, experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. I want to touch just briefly on this notion of can't tell the true from the false. And one of the things that came up for me this week as I was talking with people and really kind of gaining some feedback on my own was the very mechanisms, the very mental faculties that I would use to assess my illness and determine, am I okay, am I not okay? Those faculties are what's most affected by the disease, which is probably one of the key reasons why I get so bad. And another aspect of that, remember, it says the alcoholic life seems like the only normal one. For me, how that manifested was that the conditions and events that got me into AA, if you would have asked me, I would have told you those conditions and events represented the worst part of my alcoholism. I hope that makes sense. Meaning that if you had to rank what was worst about my alcoholism, what was most pernicious or insidious about my alcoholism, I would have pointed to the events that got me into AA in the first place. But remember, I can't tell the true from the false. And my false life seems like the only normal one. So it took me a long time getting sober to develop a clear recognition that what was worst about my disease had very little to do with the events that got me here. And if folks have been around for a while and have done a number of fourth and fifth step inventories, you could probably relate to me there. So the alcoholic life seems like the only normal one. And now I am at the top of 27. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution to not drink again. This is repeated over and over, so I am locked in a vicious cycle. I think that what I've just read there is critical for understanding what the new person is going through. And for those of us here, and myself in my sobriety, it was even more critical in understanding where I was throughout a large portion of my recovery, my time in AA. Because look what it says in the, we'll hit this in a second. It talks about the necessity of a psychic change needing to happen. So what I have seen, and if you talk to a number of long-term members, they will confirm my observation, is that a number of people come into Alcoholics Anonymous. They do not experience a psychic change, but they stay hooked in and motivated by this belief. Remember what I said is that the things that got them here were their worst symptom. And really what they have done is they have not stopped the cycle. All they've done is elongated it. So what we find and what happens in terms of that elongation is they become restless, irritable, and discontent with Alcoholics Anonymous. Because, and this is not in the book, but I'll just share my experience. My experience is with those people going through that cycle, the disease before the disease makes a drink look good, it makes AA look bad. And so it says it's repeated over and over And unless. Now, these last two lines I have double highlighted as a warning and as a piece of direction. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is little hope of his recovery. That's a critical piece of direction, because what it tells me, and which is also what I strive to convey to people I am sponsoring, is that it tells me that my job is to experience an entire psychic change. Based on whose terms? Based on the terms of the people around me, a trusted advisor, a spiritual advisor, a sponsor. Because if you would have asked me at a month and a half sober in AA, have you experienced a psychic change? I would have told you I experienced a change and a half. I'm like not only good to go, but anybody who stands next to me has a psychic change. My psychic change was so profound. However, my sponsor would have probably told you otherwise. So moving onward, on the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, from this point forward, I have double highlighted where it says once a psychic change, I have double highlighted as direction and promise. So for me, that's green and blue. Once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. And of course, those rules are what we will be taught when we get into the main body of the book. First, seeing Bill's example in Bill's story, and then moving forward from there. And that really sums up I would say, the entirety of the mission that I have here in Alcoholics Anonymous, along with how it benefits me. So, and if just in case anybody's interested, the first two lines there where it says, on the other hand, and as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, that introductory part of the sentence I don't have highlighted. You can highlight it however you choose, but the meat of the sentence is from that, or the paragraph is from that point forward. And that brings us to the end of section 1, which I called the Divine Allergy. I say that because Dr. Silkworth frames this as an allergy, but he defines this as you could also call it spiritual allergy. But it's an allergy that has divine or spiritual implications. The next section, and from here forward, we're starting on section 3, and it says, I'm calling this beyond mental control. And we can recall from the first letter that Dr. Silkworth wrote, he tends to do a little bit of back and forth. He will press forward with his argument, and then he will kind of retreat back and go in depth, further depth to an earlier point. And so we see that structure again, and then he presses forward again, of course, and going deeper still. And we see that same structure here in this longer statement, because with the beginning of Beyond Mental Control, he's really reflecting again on some points he made earlier, but he goes deeper. Men and women have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop. But I cannot. You must help me. Now, you could highlight that a number of different ways. I thought at first of highlighting it as a warning. but I highlighted it in green as direction. And I did that because what I came to realize is that true change in this program was only available to me when I hit the point that detailed in this paragraph. Meaning that, because I don't know about anybody else here, but what really just sort of takes me back today and like makes me shake my head was just how, even though my life was in total catastrophic disarray, I was pretty darn casual about this AA thing. And I was pretty, you would say my attitude was pretty arrogant and cavalier. And so I didn't experience a lot of dramatic change at the beginning. Where the change really started to happen for me was when I could adopt the mindset that's being detailed in this paragraph. And that mindset is one of, I would call, desperation. And so that, for me, that is direction. And then from there we go into something that I think is absolutely critical, because he takes that desperate mindset and he makes it even more intense with the next couple sentences. And I have these first two sentences highlighted in pink as a warning. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. I read this for years and just glossed over it, and then I thought, let me apply this in a different way. Imagine, God forbid, I don't wish this on anybody, but imagine you had a rare terminal illness and somebody told you there's one doctor I know who is the best doctor in the world for addressing this illness. And I'm saying it like that because at the time that this book was written, Dr. Silkworth was considered the best doctor in the world. And imagine you went to that doctor with your rare terminal illness and thinking, this guy is going to be my salvation. And what if that doctor looked at your case and he looked up and he said, I feel totally inadequate. I would give you all that I have, but it's not enough. How would you feel at that point? And where I connect this to is the statement we read in almost every meeting. No human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And at the time that this was written, Dr. Silkworth was considered probably the greatest human power available to deal with alcoholism. But he's sort of tightening the screws there, intensifying the desperation, but then he really drives it home. And next sentence I have in green as a bit of direction. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Again, that's another sentence that I glossed over for years. But as I look closer at it, I realize what it is that it's a critical turn. It's a critical shift in the understanding. I'm going to the greatest human power that could help me with my alcoholism. That person throws up their hands and says, I can't help you. However, one feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. And the next sentence I have as in blue as a promise. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, He said, and I believe he means like he means as Dr. Young. I could, you know what? I'm going to revise that, and that I might also highlight that as a warning, like a promise and a warning. It seems like because maybe I misunderstood it, and but it's saying that the doctor can help in many cases. But remember what Young said. I've been trying to create a psychic change in you. And then the rest of the sentence I have is a warning. We physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. So we've helped some, but many types do not respond to this approach. And what he's talking about there is he's talking about insight. If we'll jump ahead for a moment and remember the story of Roland Hazard. Roland goes to Carl Jung and comes away initially very confident because he now understands the mechanisms of his brain and how his own psychology functions. Yet he finds himself repeatedly drunk again. Because, of course, we later learn he didn't have a psychic change. So sorry for the confusion on that point, my own confusion.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you just repeat again where you start with though, so the end of that paragraph? How did you highlight
Well,
it?
I said it wrong, then I hedged it, and now I will say it right. From though the aggregate through to the end of the paragraph is a warning. Sorry about that. Hold on, I need to write something down on my 10th step list. Brian, I'll be giving you a call later today. So, thank you, Donna. The rest of that page through to onto the next page is a warning. And when I say through to the next page, I mean the lines at the top, which complete the paragraph, and then the next paragraph after that, which is just one sentence. All warning. I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I'm going to stop right there because there's so much information that I get when I come to AA. And it's a double-edged sword because I need certain information to understand the nature of my illness. The problem I ran into was I saw my recovery as a process of idea accumulation, meaning I need to learn all this information, and once I know it, I'll, like Roland Hazard, I'll understand the nature of my brain so much that I won't drink again. But I think what we see here and what is being pointed out is the mental information, the ideas that we get are a bridge to spiritual action. They need to be a bridge to spiritual action if we are to experience the psychic change. And we're right at 7, but I think if I go quickly, if I can beg for another minute, I think I can get through the end of this section. I've had many men who, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. That means they had every reason in the world, every mental reason to stay sober, yet they drank. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. Remember I mentioned that Dr. Silkworth, he will come back, he will make a point, he'll move on, and then he'll come back to the point and drive it home. So the point, and we read it today, remember he said this cycle is repeated over and over. And here we see the cycle repeating over. And he explains it with a craving beyond their mental control. That's what drives the cycle, the craving beyond mental control. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. And just in case there's any ambiguity about that, that's what he means is suicide. Many people will commit suicide. And it's not just, and typically what I find, because I am not an expert on suicide. I will say that through my professional life, I worked with suicide support for a while. And what I found is that typically in those cases where there were drugs and alcohol involved, it was rarely the case where they attempted suicide thinking that I just can't stop drinking. And if I can't stop drinking, I want to die. It's all the other problems that pile up on us. And there is no way out. And the drinking is seen as either irrelevant or secondary. I don't want to monopolize the time. I want to share one thing with you and then we'll open it up. And that is, I read the word paramount. And while I thought I knew, and I had a pretty good idea what it meant, I went back to the 1935 dictionary. Where is it? Paramount. Above all others in rank, order, or jurisdiction. Supreme. And 1531 means that's the year it was first recognized in literature. Superior to all others in influence and power preeminent. So that gives us a pretty good idea of what the word paramount means. And with that brings us to an end of section 3, which again, I entitled the section Beyond Mental Control. From there, we go into section 4, which is many classes but one symptom. And I'll hold off before, that's what I call it, but I will wait until we move forward before explaining that. So what I want to do now is I just want to open it up if there are any questions or comments or thoughts about what we've read so far. Christiane, please.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Christiane, an alcoholic. So glad to be here, and thank you for everything. The words, I get hung up on psychic change. My mind goes, what does it exactly mean? And I know we're going into the meaning of so many different words, and I think like intuitively I know probably what that means. And so I looked it up, and I have to hear it differently than psychic change, I guess, because I rebel against it so much, maybe. And what I found was it says relating to the soul or mind. And it's like, oh, okay, so that means my mind has to change and my soul has to change. And I remember the experience of coming to my first AA meeting and hearing the 12 steps read, and the introduction back to I was going to have to deal with my higher power and all the rebelliousness that I'd had in relation to my higher power. And so it's sort of like, for me, that surrender and, I want to debate with it. I want to still be rebellious about it. I don't want to trust it. I'm scared of it. And as you're reading that here this morning, I realized, it's essential. The warning. I have to surrender, and try not to be scared of it. Thank you.
Christiane, thank you. I have also some of my experience that I can share, but I'd like to hear what Carolyn would like to say.
Morning, I'm Carolyn. I'm an alcoholic. Just a quick question. David, you had said, you used a word to describe, you said to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. Do you remember what you said? I couldn't get it quick enough.
Fred, let's go to the instant replay and see.
Oh, that's
Kidding.
Okay. I'll do it myself.
I have no idea. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll do it myself. I'll listen to the recording.
No, but no, I have no idea. So sorry, Carolyn.
No worries. That's okay.
Okay. As Christiane was sharing, I just wanted to think, and this is simply my experience, not in terms of giving direction or whatnot. But I just remember this feeling when I started to work the steps and take the actions that were prescribed in the book. What started to happen with me, and do them at someone else's direction in a way that there was pretty close conformity to what was written. And I remember the experience that I was experiencing something that was larger than the sum of its parts, that felt to me like it was almost rewiring my DNA. And that has happened more than once for me, and it is, quite frankly, I'm engaged in that process right now, and again with some other character defects, and I feel like my whole outlook on life and myself is being rewired from the inside out, in a way that I'm not in control of. Rich, please.
Good morning, everybody. Rich, alcoholic. Yeah, I've been in this program for a long time, and the sobriety that I've had in the last 7 months is so much different than any other. And a part of it is I have so much more of a driving interest in our disease. And through a lot of personal research, this nails it. I am, by my disease, incapable of consuming alcohol and having anything other than a desire to keep drinking once I do that. I mean, it's just, I've proven it again and again and again. And in the end, it was the craving, and I just couldn't stop it. I didn't need a reason. I just had to drink, and I just couldn't stop. And every time I relapsed, it just got worse and worse and worse. And I drank more faster, and it didn't have an effect. And I drank more trying to get the effect, and it was just insane. And reading this and understanding this and just listening to other people talk about it, it's just, I can't drink. I mean, it's just finally hit me at all. There's no controlling it. The times I had stopped in the past on my own are over. I could never stop again on my own. It's done. The disease just progresses. And this really nails it. It's just an obsession for no other reason other than I'm obsessed with alcohol. Thanks for letting me share, guys. Sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And we do have a few minutes, so I might jump ahead and start. Juanita, please.
Yes, thank you so much, David, and thank everybody for participating. I was looking up Jagannath. I know in the dictionary, the Big Book Dictionary, it just says Jag, but in the 12 and 12 dictionary, it let me know, excuse me, a few things. And one was, it would say something to which people blindly devoted themselves. And then it also says to which people are ruthless and sacrificed. And that's what we did when it comes to alcohol. We were so totally changed in mind. And when I heard that, it sounded like something like that, that it would turn our mind and our attitude and our spirit. So when you said that, and I had to get these dictionary because these words in here is really awesome to understand because it's something I never heard of. But I like your explanation. To me, it's all coincide with the same thing, and everybody uses their own words. But just to know that I could be restlessly sacrificed into alcohol because I get restless, irritable, and discontent. And then when I drink, I'm still restless, irritable, and discontent, but on a higher level. That's all I have to share. Thank you.
Absolutely. Also, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that I forgot to do, which I am doing now, is I'm not going to go through announcements and so forth, but I put a bunch of stuff in the chat just now, including the link to our archives, because remember, as we've mentioned previously, all these meetings are being recorded audio only, and they are being posted on this meeting has its own YouTube channel where those meetings are posted within 24 hours of them taking place. John, please.
Morning. My name's John. I'm an alcoholic, and this psychic change idea intrigues me because I just wonder what element of psychic change happened to me in the very beginning. And I was sitting here thinking while you were talking, and I was saying, what made the difference? What was a change in my life when I came to AA? And that change was that I had found my people. I didn't know they existed because all my friends who were drinkers but weren't alcoholic couldn't identify with me in my lonely hours in the middle of the night. What's the problem? How come I have to keep drinking? This is hopeless. The psychic change was that when I found AA and I found my people, the idea in my mind of hopelessness began to disappear. That I was no longer alone. And better than that, I was welcomed into that fellowship, into that group of people. I had finally found something that I had never even dreamed existed. And that was you people of AA. Thank you.
John, thank you so much. And folks, it is now 7:14. Oh, Juanita, go right ahead.
No, that was a mistake. I was trying to put up a heart for everyone.
Oh, okay. It is 7:14, so rather than move forward, I'll just say that next week what we'll do is we will pick it up with the beginning of what I'm terming Section 4. This is the next section of Dr. Silkworth's statement. It begins, the classification of alcoholics seems most difficult. And that's where we'll start. And I entitled the section Many Classes, or you could say classifications, but they're all underscored by a single symptom.